Hi there, everybody. I think it's time to go over the HOA addendum. This is an addendum that's used a lot in Arizona. We have a lot of HOAs, and we utilize this. And I think it's good for everybody to really understand how it's used. It's a 3-page addendum, and it's required interaction a couple of different times throughout the transaction. So it's not just a sign and send over. So I want to dive into it and really show you how it should be used. All right, let's dig in. Okay, so here's the HOA Plan Community Addendum by AAR. It's a great addendum. Lays out a lot of good information and actually one of the few that comes with instructions. So it is 3 pages long, and you'll notice that I'll zoom in a little bit so we can read some things here. Strangely enough, page 2 is where all the instructions are, and then page 3 is the final piece. So let me walk through this real quick. So page 1 is what you should have your seller filled out at the beginning of the listing. So when the listing goes live, it should have this information filled out, ideally before it goes live on the MLS, and you actually upload this to the MLS. So this first page is what you want filled out. You have the seller, you have the address, you have the date that they filled this out, all the information about the association, what the name is, their contact info, what kind of dues exist. And this is normal monthly dues and such like that. Down here is fees payable upon close of escrow, so your transfer, cap improvement, any prepaid association fees, disclosure fees, and that kind of stuff. It does talk about, like, this is disclosing all of the fees. The fact that this disclosure fee by Arizona law is paid for by the seller, not by the buyer, you're still disclosing that so that the new buyer knows exactly what they're getting into here. If there are any other fees, you lay it out. So there's transfer fees, there's cap improvement, and then there's prepaid association fees. All this data the seller needs to attain from the HOA. So they give them a call and ask them these questions. Some HOAs are on top of it. They have a very simple document they can send out to you that lays all these out. Some of them have them published on their website. Some of them, it's just basically the president of the HOA that's just going to tell you all of these things. Typically, as a realtor, if we call them, then they want us to pay for it. They want us to actually pay a HOA disclosure form release. Whereas if the owner calls up saying they need to fill out this form, they can typically get that information. So the seller fills all of this out. The seller signs page 1. At the beginning of the listing, that's it. That's all you do with this document. You upload it to the MLS and you leave it alone. The second page here has the instructions that you should read through and know about. And then the third page is actually reserved for the buyer to fill out when they send in their offer to you. So they're ideally, the first page is filled out by the seller. It's uploaded to the MLS. The buyer's agent downloads the HOA form from the MLS, takes it, fills the page 3 out with their buyer's information and their selections. Notice they have 2 negotiable parts: the transfer fees and the cap improvement fees. Buyer, seller, or 50-50 split, or whatever, however you want to manage this. Has line 80 and 81 allow you to split up anything else if there are other fees or anything else that you wanted to split up. It does redefine to the buyer that buyer shall pay all the prepaid and the seller shall pay all the disclosure fees. Those are non-negotiable pieces as far as this document is concerned. And then, of course, like every other document that we have, has an additional terms and conditions. So if there is something else, then you can write that in here. If it's if there's other things that you want to take care of, then you can write those in here. And then the buyer signs this and sends it with their offer. And then the seller signs it when they look at the offer, and whether they're issuing a counter or whatever, the seller signs this document, just like the purchase contract. The seller signs the purchase contract. Even if there is a counter, the seller signs this, and then if there are any changes that they want to make to anything pre-negotiated in this, it's addressed in the counter back to you. So that's pretty much it. I'll go over basics real quick. 3-page addenda. First page is filled out and signed by the seller, and then that should be supplied in the Documents tab in the MLS, or basically at the beginning of any contract. Second page is instructions and some additional obligations. Third page, the buyer fills out and signs and submits with their offer, and then the seller signs it after they receive the offer. One of the most common things I see with this thing is the seller has signed both page 1 and page 3 before any offer has accepted, and that is not only wrong, it's risky. It just you've put your seller's signature on whatever the buyer wants to put on here. So, and the seller does not fill out this stuff. So I do not want to see the seller sign that the buyer is going to pay for all of this stuff down there, because that's not how it works. This is a buyer's election of negotiation. This is not a seller's push out of negotiation. All right. Well, there's the HOA addendum. Pretty straightforward. I hope that helps answer any questions or anything like that anybody had, and stay tuned for more contract stuff. All right.